Kitty! Hello everybody, welcome back to my YouTube channel. We have a very long video today, so if you have to use the bathroom, go and do that. Get some water, get a snack, and let's dive into this. And before we really get into the contents of this video, which as you can see, we're looking at the title, is about Kaitlin Bennett, I just want to put out like a quick, I don't know if disclaimer is the right word, but a quick comment, a PSA. If anyone comments anything about Kaitlin Bennett's husband and him allegedly going to conversion therapy, your comment will be deleted. I think that a lot of the jokes about that have really reduced the experiences of survivors and victims of conversion therapy, and I think that making jokes about it doesn't really do anything to facilitate a productive conversation. So yes, if you comment anything about that, you will be deleted. So with that being said, let's get into the video. So a couple weeks ago, I was explaining the concept of conservative influencers to my mother. And for context, she is a mid-50s Gen X moderate Democrat. And conservative influencers were something that she was having a very difficult time kind of wrapping her head around. So in order to help her understand, I thought I would provide some examples. And the first conservative influencers that popped into my brain were Christian Walker and Kaitlin Bennett. And Kaitlin Bennett was obviously the choice to go with for this situation. But when I went to Kaitlin Bennett's Twitter page and her Liberty Hangout Twitter page, and if you don't know, Liberty Hangout is kind of like her political group. She just kind of posts whatever she wants on there. When I went to the most recent posts, I was greeted with quite the realization that this Kaitlin Bennett was not the same woman who went viral about a year and a half ago for gun rights and getting mad about trans people. And I just thought that the progression of her political views was something that was really interesting, especially taking into context the complete, just everything that's going on with the American Republican Party. It is dying. And I just thought that it was something that was very interesting. So that is the context for today's video. So before we dive into all of Kaitlin Bennett's views that really set her apart from other conservative Republicans, I think that there are some key things that we should recognize. And that is that Kaitlin Bennett is, or was, a girl boss conservative. So a lot of conservatives are very misogynistic, holding beliefs that women should, you know, stay at home, help the kids. And a lot of conservative women, especially outspoken conservative women, tend to get held to a different standard, and a lot of conservative men just kind of treat them like crap. Along with the aspect of misogyny, another thing that I think we should recognize before diving into this is how Kaitlin Bennett was kind of disowned by the right. So the left obviously didn't like her. The very far leftists and communists didn't like her. Not even the moderate Democrats and centrists would like her. And then the right started to not even like her. So she was getting pushed out of her own space. And it was mostly just because she tended to pick battles that a lot of conservatives didn't think were really worth winning. And let's be honest, her debate skills were not up to par with other man on the street conservatives like Ben Shapiro, or he doesn't really show up turning people on the street. But you get what I'm saying. And so I think those are two important things to recognize when talking about Kaitlin Bennett, is how she was kind of pushed out of her own right-wing community. And another important thing to recognize is how the American Republican Party responded to the murder of George Floyd and the protests that followed and the legislation that followed that. And then we have Trump losing the 2020 election and just everything completely crumbling apart within the Republican Party. So during the destruction of the American Republican Party, Kaitlin Bennett began to move farther right. Right now, we're kind of seeing different subgroups of the American Republican Party trying to come together. We have the crazy extremist Trump people. We have the more classic, you know, 80s Republican, how, you know, we're not gonna say that we're racist, but we're gonna introduce legislation that will disproportionately affect Black Americans, you know? And Kaitlin Bennett noticed all of these things, and she moved to the right. And so there are three key things that I feel really separate her from other American conservatives. One of the main beliefs of the American Republican Party is that America is kind of amazing, that everyone should want to move here. It's so fun, right? And Kaitlin Bennett has been tweeting stuff that kind of leads one to believe that that might not be her thinking, and therefore that belief sets her apart from a lot of other Republicans. The second thing is her anti-Protestant beliefs. So that is hard to wrap your mind around, but Kaitlin Bennett has become very religious over the pandemic and over the last year, and she has become very Catholic, and she has become very anti-Protestant. So I don't know what it's like in Europe, but in the United States there does not seem to be that much beef between Catholics and Protestants. And as most of us know, a lot of the first, should I say settlers or colonizers? A lot of the first people to come over from Europe to the United States were groups of people looking for religious freedom following the Protestant Reformation. So it is just strange for an American conservative to be anti-Protestant, if we can even call her an American conservative anymore. Because as we know, Trump and Mike Pence were both evangelicals, and 43% of Americans are Protestants. And finally, the last thing that I want to touch on is some of the more anti-capitalist stuff that she has been saying. Capitalism is another thing that is very important to the American right. And for her to say things against capitalism, it is her kind of saying things against American conservatism, because capitalism is so ingrained into that. And with those three things being said, I just kind of want to get into the tweets and what's really going down with Miss Kaitlin Bennett. So I want to begin discussing her tweets by talking about some of the more anti-American stuff that she has been saying, just because I think it is one of, again, the most important things that sets her apart from other American conservatives, and kind of just shows her movement to the right and her divergence from, is that how you use the word divergence? And just kind of her straying away from the traditional American conservative views. So here we have, history will one day look back on the United States as one of the most evil and godless countries to ever exist. One nation under God was always a lie to keep the faithful blind. So I felt that this tweet was kind of a good introduction to many of the things that we will be discussing in this video. As we can see, she is talking about God. She has become a very religious woman in the past year. And her just kind of saying that the United States is not as cool as a lot of conservatives say it is. And that is something that, again, sets her apart. Hello everybody, editing me. I just want to add a couple more points regarding the last sentence of that tweet, which is, one nation under God was always a lie to keep the faithful blind. And I just think it's really interesting that she chooses a section of the Pledge of Allegiance to talk about keeping the faithful blind, because a lot of, like, as we know, a lot of conservatives get super bent out of shape when mostly Black Americans choose to not stand for the national anthem. I think that it's interesting that she's implying that taking part in things like the national anthem and the Pledge of Allegiance will keep the faithful blind. And I just feel like I didn't do the best job at articulating that, so I wanted to just add some more stuff. And I also want to say that I'm kind of using anti-American in a very liberal way, not to Kaitlin Bennett's use of the word liberalism just ruins my brain. But I'm using anti-American very liberally, and I just want to explain that I think that critiquing America does not make you anti-American. I think that that's something that's really important to having a functioning society, is listening to people and changing things when they're no longer up to date with what, you know, society's up to. So I just wanted to add that, because when I was editing, I was just kind of like, I don't like the way that I'm using anti-American. So I hope that you are enjoying the video. And then we have this gem, that is the First Amendment is kind of overrated. Oh my god. Since conservatives support the First Amendment, they permitted liberals to organize against us and grow their influence. Liberals then gained power to take away our First Amendment rights. The First Amendment did nothing but give power to our enemies and destroy everything we love. So this tweet is obviously a little bit dramatic, but the First Amendment is something that a lot of Americans, both left and right, take very seriously. It is something that our history classes love to tell us that America kind of came up with, the idea of freedom of speech. And although conservatives have definitely tried to, how do I put this, debate the First Amendment, Kaitlin Bennett is just outright saying that it's overrated, that she doesn't like it because it gives a voice to people she doesn't like. And I think that is something that is very interesting about a lot of the things that Kaitlin Bennett has been saying. It's just that she's, again, saying stuff that a lot of conservatives are afraid to say. That was one of the major things that allowed Trump to be elected president, is he was just outright saying, let's build a wall. And we can see that somebody just kind of outright saying what they mean is something that Kaitlin Bennett really likes in a political figure. And I think that Kaitlin Bennett saying the First Amendment is kind of overrated just shows how she no longer has some of the values that a lot of conservative Republicans have, especially a lot of more traditional, less radical conservative Republicans. Before we get farther into the video, I just want to talk about some of the contradictions in what Kaitlin Bennett has been saying. So here on her Liberty Hangout page, she has posted, if your first reaction to seeing protests in Cuba is that you hope they adopt capitalism, you're not helping. All you're doing is asking slaves to choose new masters. To be free, one must turn to Christ, not the latest iPhone. So in this tweet, Kaitlin Bennett is kind of saying stuff that could be perceived as anti-capitalist. Many Americans view communist nations as horrible places that need to be saved, and Cuba, you know, is one of them. And so her saying that she hopes they kind of don't adopt capitalism is kind of like, okay, I thought we liked capitalism, you know, what's going on? But then on her personal Twitter page, she posts, Cubans, we want freedom, communism sucks. Media, Cubans protest vaccine shortages. WTF. Hello everybody, editing me. I just wanted to add a couple things to my point because I don't feel like I was being the most clear when I was giving my examples and whatnot. But I think the biggest thing that sets apart Kaitlin Bennett's personal tweet and her Liberty Hangout tweet is how on the Liberty Hangout tweet, in her own words, she says that Cubans adopting capitalism would just be slaves choosing a new master, saying that both capitalism and communism do not equal freedom. When on her personal Twitter, she says, Cubans, quote, freedom, we want freedom, communism sucks, implying that freedom and capitalism are synonymous, or that freedom and communism are opposites. And although I guess she does not outright say that capitalism is what will give them the freedom, I just think that it is interesting that that's how she kind of like chooses to word it. So yes. So in this tweet, she is saying that Cubans want freedom from communism. Although she doesn't outright say that she hopes that Cubans don't adopt capitalism, it is definitely a little strange when comparing it to the Liberty Hangout tweet that I just showed. And that's something that I want to talk about. It's just kind of the contradiction between what she's posting on her personal page and her YouTube page and what she is posting on her Liberty Hangout Twitter. Another example of this, I feel, is we just looked at all of the more anti-American stuff that she has been posting, but when you look at her YouTube page, she has been posting stuff about the Olympics and about how Olympians need to stand with the Pledge of Allegiance, and if they don't, it's anti-American. Kind of like, whoa, 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 whoa. Thought that we weren't a fan of America anymore. You know, what's going on? But my theory for why these kind of contradictions may exist in all of her social media accounts is that, you know, she wants money. She wants money from the Republicans. So as we can see on her website, we can pay 15 bucks a month to get access to her real, unfiltered opinions. So I think that she may still be posting a lot of this stuff to appeal to the conservative right, even though she doesn't hold all of the same beliefs, but she still needs money. The other thing is, who really runs Liberty Hangout? And on their website we have her husband and herself, and she is listed as the digital content producer, so that leads us to believe that she is producing this content. But at the end of the day, we're not really sure who is posting the tweets on Liberty Hangout's Twitter page, but at the end of the day, someone is still posting them, and that is a lot. So with that being said, let's get into our next topic, which is the anti-Protestant stuff that she has been posting. Before we dive into it, I just want to remind everybody that America is 43% Protestant. Not like out of religious people, out of everyone. America is 43% Protestant. So, that being said, let's get into it. In this first tweet, Kaitlin Bennett is saying the US was discovered by Catholics in 1513. The British didn't get here for another century. Protestants are the ones that brought slavery and liberalism here with them. So as we can see in this tweet, she blames Protestants for bringing liberalism to North America. And her use of liberalism and leftism is very confusing throughout her tweets. And I don't want to get too definition-y in this video, but she blames Protestants for bringing over more left-wing ideas. And she also blames Protestants for slavery, which is a very confusing sentence. Hello everybody, it is editing me. I'm sorry if these are getting annoying. I just want to make sure that I'm saying all of the things that I want to say. And I feel that when I was talking about the slavery portion of this tweet, I was not doing a good job at focusing on what was actually important about it, and I was instead focusing way too much on statistics and who was Catholic and who was Protestant, and calling her historically inaccurate. And that is just not productive. Me and Kaitlin Bennett sitting here pointing fingers doesn't do anything. And I instead should have been focusing on the fact that Kaitlin Bennett brought up slavery, not because she cares about, like, the people in the Americas because of slavery. She doesn't care about systemic issues. She doesn't care about Black Americans. She was just bringing it up to spite liberals, to make some weird point about religion. And I think that's what I should have been focusing on, and I just kind of wanted to take that portion out and put this in, so yeah. To close out this section, I think that this tweet just shows how religious and how blinded by her religious beliefs Kaitlin Bennett has become, and that is Catholics are the world's most prosecuted minority. What? Hello, I'm back again, just to tell everybody that I will use the terms prosecuted and persecuted interchangeably throughout the rest of this video. I'm gonna blame it on the fact that I'm dyslexic, but it is a serious issue that I have. I'm just not telling the two apart, but yes, I mean persecuted, not prosecuted. I don't know if Catholics are the world's most prosecuted religion. They potentially could be, but I'm sorry. What? I feel that this tweet is just kind of objectively false. I guess we have Irish Catholics, but even that's very complicated, and I guess comparing that to the persecution of Jewish people and Muslim people, it is very bizarre. At the end of the day, should you really be comparing how many people were persecuted for their religion. I just think that this is a very bizarre thing to tweet, and it just was confusing to me. The next topic that I kind of want to get into is her kind of anti-capitalist and more anti-American political beliefs. And I feel like a good introduction to this is this tweet that Kaitlin Bennett's Liberty Hangout page retweeted, and the tweet is from Nick the Rigid Catholic, and it says, "The union of throne and altar, authority guided by morality, earthly kingship reflecting the kingship of Christ, hashtag make monarchy great again." What happened to democracy? What happened to the original plot of the movie? I thought that we were all pro-democracy, pro-America. Where did all this monarchy stuff come from? She also posted some stuff against George Washington. I'm not including that in this video because there is so many bizarre things on her Twitter page. But she seems to be against presidents and against democracy, which is very bizarre from somebody who is formerly a conservative American. But as you can see, Make Monarchy Great Again is a play on Make America Great Again, Trump's campaign slogan. And it is just a very bizarre situation. So before we really dive into a lot of the more anti-capitalist stuff Miss Kaitlin Bennett has been posting, I wanted to bring up the Protestant work ethic. As we already know, Kaitlin Bennett is not a fan of Protestants. And as we get into some of the more anti-capitalist stuff that she has said, we'll notice that she kind of connects Protestantism and capitalism together. And that is why I think it is important that we bring up the Protestant work ethic, or the idea of the Protestant work ethic. Many of us Americans have probably heard the phrase kind of thrown around, but I thought that it would be nice to kind of give everybody a quick refresher, even though I said I didn't want this video to be entirely definition. So the term Protestant work ethic was coined in 1904 by Max Weber in his book, The Protestant Work Ethic and the Spirit of Capitalism. In this book, Weber argues that the Catholic Church can no longer issue salvation to Protestants, so Protestants must look for signs of salvation in success, therefore leading Protestants to make more money. Hello everybody, editing me again. Yes, I am still editing, but I wanted to add a few things because I recognize that not everybody took world history this year and spent 2 weeks learning about the Reformation. So I thought I would just add some stuff that might make Weber's point and the controversy surrounding his work make a little bit more sense. But basically, in the Catholic Church in the 15th century, you could like pay somebody to tell you if you were going to get to heaven or not, and like how long you were going to spend, you know, in purgatory. So what that meant is that you could get guaranteed your salvation by a member of the Catholic Church, and to receive this guarantee you typically had to pay money, and that was one of the things Mr. Martin Luther was not a fan of, and one of the things that drove him to write the 99 Theses and caused the whole Protestant Reformation. But anyway, in Protestantism, there's obviously not somebody you can pay to tell you if you're going to make it to heaven or not, so Protestants tried to look for signs of their salvation in their success, which is ironic considering how exploitative capitalism is, and makes Weber's point a little bit more confusing when you recognize that to receive that guarantee of salvation from the Catholic Church, you also had to have enough money to pay for it. But yes, just wanted to add that. He also cites Puritan values aiding the emergence of capitalism, and those values being self-discipline, saving, and hard work. And as anybody who's been in a third grade American classroom, we know that Puritans were the ones who landed in Plymouth and had the first Thanksgiving, or whatever you want to call that whole encounter. He also argues that Protestant has more kind of ideas supporting individualism, and as we'll see, Kaitlin Bennett is kind of against individualism, which is something that is very important to a lot of Americans, especially conservative Americans. So the Protestant work ethic has obviously been controversial since it was coined in 1904, but I also wanted to kind of talk about some of the arguments against the Protestant work ethic. And it's also important to recognize that Protestantism and capitalism began to emerge at the same time in the 15th century in Europe. Martin Luther and his 99 Theses. Yes, I took a sophomore year history class. Anyway, but many argue that they just kind of emerged at the same time and that they're not really as connected as Max Weber makes it out to be. There were a lot of things happening that aided the emergence of capitalism, like the decline of feudalism, higher wages, which the bubonic plague, everyone died, so people began to give out higher wages to motivate people to work, more property rights, and just kind of a new society emerging after the bubonic plague. And of course we have the whole Enlightenment and all of that crap going on. You can see that later. In Western Europe, we can see that sometimes Protestants were wealthier than their Catholic counterparts, and some historians think that this can be attributed to the fact that most Protestants could read and most Catholics were illiterate. And this was because Protestantism encouraged people to kind of like read their own Bibles, when in Catholicism it was you were being told a priest's interpretation of the Bible. But overall, the Protestant work ethic is a very controversial topic. I just thought I would present the facts and then you can create your own opinion, but I just feel like it was something important to mention to kind of understand the intersections of Kaitlin Bennett's anti-Protestantism and anti-capitalism. So, to really dive into this section, I feel like this tweet it says a lot, and that is that feudalism is greater than capitalism. So many of us might be thinking, what on God's green earth is going on? What happened to the original plot of the movie? So let's kind of dive into her reasoning for why feudalism is greater than capitalism. So here we have, before the Industrial Revolution, you might work for a lord and enjoy the benefits of living on his land. Work wasn't about career or profit, it was about community. When you spend all day at work, you're away from your family. Back then, work was your family. In this tweet, we can kind of see Kaitlin Bennett's disapproval of individualism, and although individualism, that is kind of hard to say that many times in a row, is an important idea in Western Europe and across the globe, Americans, we take it to another level. And we can see in this tweet that she really also supports the idea of family, and not necessarily the capitalist kind of nuclear family, but just the idea of having a shared community, which does not support the idea of American individualism, and that is hard to say. It kind of goes against a lot of the things American conservatives say. So in this tweet, she says, individualism is a cancer on the world. We are not autonomous creatures. We are social beings that rely on each other to grow and succeed. Prioritizing the individual over the community is why America failed. We have no common values and why it will be so hard to rebuild. So in this tweet, we can kind of see a lot of things that she has been discussing throughout this whole video. And that is that America is not as cool as you think it is. That capitalism is also not as cool as you think it is because of individualism. And we can see from her other tweets that she very much associates America with Protestantism. And here we again see the idea of the Protestant work ethic and her kind of saying America failed because of Protestants and capitalism. That's why we should bring back the manor system. She also mentions rebuilding America, which I think is kind of interesting considering a lot of conservatives and I think that everything is fine. All we need is Trump back in office or some other less offensive Republican in office, like maybe a Reagan or a Nixon situation. It'll be fine. To close out this video, I thought that it would be nice to bring up this tweet, which is, I can't believe we were once anarcho-capitalists. What a cringy philosophy. Society needs order and man cannot put money first. So again, showing ideas of individualism, anti-capitalism, and just, I feel like it really highlights how different her political views have become from a lot of other American conservatives. We also have, there's nothing wrong with there's nothing wrong with authoritarianism if it's for the right reasons. I'd unironically be okay with using government power to ban everything I don't like. It's the only way to live in the society we want. So I think that this tweet, again, really encapsulates how far she has strayed from traditional American conservative beliefs. What happened to democracy? I don't know. What happened to the original plot of the movie? I also think that this tweet is kind of ironic because she has just gone on this whole rant about how she doesn't like individualism. But then she's like, I'd be okay with using government power to ban what I don't like. I just think that it is very interesting and kind of shows that she has a kind of warped understanding of history. She kind of likes to cherry pick history. And this final tweet, I want to use to propel us into the conclusion of this video and my final thoughts. And that is, get married, make babies, follow Jesus. Very Catholic of her. So I think that it is important for us to recognize, as I stated in the beginning of this video, that Kaitlin Bennett was kind of shut out by her fellow conservative influencers. One for not being the best debater and other for being a woman. And I think that has led her down a very interesting path. And in a sense, her political views have kind of boiled down to America's most important ideal, and that is white supremacy and being pro-colonization. Although I did not show every single weird thing she's ever tweeted, she does say a lot of interesting things about the colonization of the Americas, specifically about the genocide of indigenous Americans and the spread of Catholicism through Latin America. And although she's not as outwardly racist as she once was, through her tweets about colonization, we can see that she still very much holds ideals of white supremacy. And I think that Kaitlin Bennett has, in a sense, accepted her role as a white woman within white supremacy, and that is to make babies. And I think that is what has led her down this path, is kind of realizing the end goal of white supremacy, if not on a conscious level, on a subconscious one. And I just think that this is a very interesting conversation. If you have any thoughts about this, feel free to leave them in the comments below. I would love to read them. And I don't know if I'm grasping at straws here with this whole accepting the endgame of white supremacy as a white woman. I just kind of feel that her support of feudalism and this whole idea of getting rid of individualism just kind of shows that she really cares about making babies and having a family. And she has, that was the biggest bumblebee I've ever seen outside a window. She has posted a lot of other very bizarre things that I feel kind of support this claim, so feel free to look at her Twitter if you would like. But a little warning, some of it is very offensive. The stuff that she has posted in response to the genocide of First Nations people in Canada is horrific, and just a warning if you go and look at it. If you like this video, make sure to like it, subscribe to my channel. I wrote a whole freaking script for this, so thank you so much for staying to the end of the video. I hope that you were able to kind of form some of your own ideas and that we can have a fun, educated, and respectful conversation in the comments below. So yes, thank you for watching, and I'll see you later. Bye!